Well, guys, thanks for joining us again. Spring practice right around the corner. We're reviewing the positions. Today we're going to hit the defensive line. Um, we'll start out really talking about all we lost, Bob, because we lost a ton, a lot of snaps that have to be replaced. And even really get down into, even kind of lost a coach, Mike Afior, who helped with the Leos and the outside linebackers, and even have to replace him. So Coach Chalk and Garner is going to have to a big year in front of him. But Bob, let's talk about who's not here anymore. And man, that's a lot of talent.
Yeah, I mean, our defensive line was the deepest position on our team last year, probably one of the deepest in college football. But we did lose a lot. James Pierce probably get called in the first round come NFL draft time, I suspect. You lost Big O, Maury Thomas, Norman Long.
Oh, let's talk about Big O for a second. He's a guy that's here for a long time.
Yeah.
God, I'd have to be interested in how many snaps he's had while he was at Tennessee, because it seemed like he was one of those guys from day one that produced.
Yeah. And over a lot, he's was a very good player, and I think he's making some draft buzz himself.
He is. He'd seen more opportunity here at Tennessee, but apparently, he's had some issues.
Yeah,
we didn't get to see.
Yeah, really didn't hear a whole lot about it, but I reckon he had a lot of attitude, off the field type stuff that held him back.
Several games, I think, that he didn't play till second half. He never heard about. Like, where's he at? Well, most likely he was suspended for the first half. Yeah. So, but talent-wise, I think we'll see him fairly early named when it comes to NFL draft time.
Also lost big Elijah Simmons. He was a guy I felt like never really reached his potential here because injuries.
Yeah, there were times, Bob, start a game or something, he would blow up somebody so massively that you're like, if this guy was here all the time, if that was the big Elijah we got all the time, there'd been no stopping that interior defensive line.
I really suspect all them guys we just mentioned will be guys who played the NFL for a while. Then you also lost Jason Jenkins, strong side defensive end, back up to transfer.
Yeah, he went to Florida State. That said, Bob, that's a lot of talent, a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Who are we going to replace? Let's start with the marquee spot. Who's going to replace James Pierce Jr.?
Well, it's hard to ever say, you lose a guy that's potentially first round, you say, well, that's going to be, you're going to have a huge drop off. But I don't really think we'll have a big drop off. Probably the starter there is probably Joshua Joseph. Played really well last year. And honestly, from the casual eye watching him at times seemed like he might have played better than Pierce. But he's a guy that's still has a bunch of talent. You know what I mean?
He does. Joshua Joseph coming here with James Pierce Jr. first year, and guess who played between the two? It was Joshua Joseph.
Right.
Reports had it. He kind of cruised into year two. Pierce did not. Pierce put his head down, went to work, went past them, blew past Joseph's.
Yeah.
And all the reports have been, after coming in last year was that got his attention.
Yeah.
Because, he saw Pierce being named as somebody could be a top pick in the draft, and he's here sitting, hey, I was ahead of that guy.
Yeah.
2 years ago, and he put his head down, and Bob Joseph's had a tremendous year for us last year. I think he's another easily an all-conference, if not all-American candidate.
I agree. He's a guy who I reckon weight kind of held him back a little bit. So he took that seriously and gained some weight. I think he's getting to where he should be weight-wise. But I tell you what, if he falters any at all, I feel like we got two big-time guys behind him. Caleb Herring, the guy we felt like has a lot of talent there at that spot. And man, can he hold back the former five-star Jordan Ross? I mean, that's another guy who, if you was to tell me at some point in the year that he's your starting Leo. It wouldn't shock me.
No, he's
Where a
that guy
guy
on the
leads
team.
some sacks or anything. Yeah,
He's the kind of guy, kind of like Pierce was. If you just come over here, line everybody up, see somebody, their explosion, run them through a few drills, um, Jordan Ross is going to jump off the page.
yeah,
Uh, now, but like I said, that said, he is a little bit behind the other guys. But while there's not a spot on this team outside of maybe quarterback that Tennessee's recruited better than the Leo position.
right. Um, the guy that's probably behind them, this guy may end up being on the strong side. I think injuries and being super raw has held him back. But he's a guy who I'm not, me personally, after watching him on the field a little bit in spring practice, uh, he's a guy who I think still has a shot of doing something. Is Emmanuel Cody.
Yeah, I don't personally don't see it this year. I'll be
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
Um, he's someone who was so raw. When we talk about raw players coming in, he is the definition of the rawest player you'll ever see.
Right.
Um,
He's a
and
freak athlete, but didn't know
not a,
much about football
yeah,
at all.
had never played on a football field that had stripes on it till he got over here.
Yeah.
So, athletic chart, he's off of it.
Yeah.
Could be one of the freak athletes in the entire country, not the
Yeah.
team. But do not expect to see anything. I don't think out of him this season. He's a guy that you hope to come back. Come do something maybe late junior, early senior season in my eyes.
Right.
Um, but Bob, that's also a position that we recruited very well at too.
Yeah.
Um, and Jaden Lofton, he's a young man, just like some of these other guys in front of him. Happy to get him on the team. But he'll come in this year, get his feet wet, learn what it's like to practice at the D1 level.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much raw talent in front of him.
Oh yeah.
Chances of him getting on the field outside of special teams are slim.
Yeah, I agree on that. Let's flip over to the strong side defensive end spot. You got Dominic Bailey, who just quietly, not the most talented guy in that room, probably the least talented guy in that room.
Yeah. But he did one thing no one else has over there.
So
Earned the trust of Roddy
yeah,
Garner
that's true.
beyond
That's true.
question.
So he's going to be in there. Speaking of talent, Tyree West, a guy who seems to just make plays. And I think if he was just a little bit more consistent, he would beat out Bailey on a consistent basis as well. Another guy who we feel like is super talented, Tyree Weathersby. He's a guy who was making buzz his true freshman year.
Yeah, the day he stepped onto the field, the coaches were saying, boys, we got something here.
Yeah.
Then he hurt his hip, and that's an injury that can really linger. I think we saw the effects of that last year.
Yeah.
The depth that we had and him still coming back from there kept him off the field. Could see a big jump from Ty Weather.
Could. I mean, when you start looking at people on this roster that could they can make a large jump. I mean, there's several people on this defensive line could. And I'm like one guy already mentioned, West. He could make a big jump. I think the talent's there. Tyree Weathersby. I mean, that guy. You could see a big jump in that guy.
Big jump. One thing before we go on to other people here, these strong side defensive ends are also going to see a lot of snaps interior wise when we go to our Rabbits package.
Yes.
Tyree West has got enough explosion coming up the middle on passing down. Weathersby could do the same. So there's a lot of snaps to go around at this position right here. Of course, by the same token, quite often last year, they take one of these guys off the field, though, to slide another Leo out of there.
Yeah.
Two at times. A lot of interchangeability in those spots.
Yeah.
But now coming in, a couple of guys that's on the team that need to hopefully move up and grab some of those snaps that we're seeing leaving by, Jenkins and whatnot.
Yeah.
Bob, Carson Gentle.
Yeah. A guy who wasn't super highly rated, in-state kid, Uh, but man, I reckon staff loves it.
Yeah, I think he's got some wrestling background, which is something you always kind of, I don't know, for you, Bob, but I like seeing my defensive linemen with a wrestling
Yeah,
background.
yeah,
They seem to be effective.
right.
Um, and another kid that I think is going to have a nice career down there, but it could take him a while to get there, and that's Kellen Lindstrom.
Yeah,
I believe he's got some talent.
I do
Uh,
too. Yeah,
but, you know, like Carson Gentle, he was behind a ton of people, but, there's a little bit more room to get onto the field this year.
yeah. As far as a true freshman coming in, speaking of talent, Marion Dye. This guy's he's got plenty of it, and will at some point in his UT career uh, be an outstanding player for us. I do believe.
Bob, I would go as far as saying Murray and I, most talented guy at that position.
And that's saying something because I feel like,
High ceiling. Let me just put it back up. High ceiling of any guy at that position right there.
yeah, he could be big time.
He's a freak of nature. Um, but he'd also be a true freshman
Right.
and some talent in front of him. Um, someone else, Bob, over at that spot, potentially, Isaiah Campbell could be, I think long term, that's a defensive tackle.
Hmm.
But the 5-star kid, uh, right now, weight wise, it screams strong side defensive end.
Yeah. If his weight's listed correctly, I'll be interested to see what he looks like weight wise come spring practice. But like you said, Tim, he could be a strong side defensive end, or he could play that three technique of our defensive tackle there. We like him in that, 280,
A little smaller.
yeah, range.
Yeah, we try to get a little bit more uh, pass rush up the middle off that guy.
Yeah.
But that's putting us over to the defensive lineman, Bob. And, we just listed a bunch of guys, Big O, Omar Lot, Elijah Simmons,
Yeah.
that are no longer there. So who's grabbing some spots, Bob?
Well, luckily we got Bryce Neeson back, another guy that's, very talented, and another guy I could see it. We say it every single year. He can make a big jump because talent-wise, he moves differently. We talk about Pierce and Jordan Ross and Luke Harder. When you watch drills, he's a guy that is like, oh, who's that guy? Because he just runs differently than guys his size.
Well, because he's used to running differently, Bob. He come in as a linebacker.
Linebacker, yeah.
Yeah, he went to, more of a rush end, then a strong side end, and finally, his body, they just said, you know what, let's put on another 20 pounds. Let's put on another 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Let's put on another 20 pounds, until he found his way all the way from linebacker to defensive tackle.
Yeah.
And he still has that explosion, the athletic profile of a linebacker.
Yeah. The guy that was probably to be starting beside of him, I would think, is probably Jackson Moore, the second-year transfer from Stanford. Played a lot last year. I think their intention was to possibly redshirt him last year.
Yeah, that was what they said.
But he played so well that they kind of forced him to
He forced his way onto the field,
Yeah.
which is what every coach wants to see out of a newcomer.
Mhm.
The odd man out right now, if that's the case, and I find myself hard to believe this because I think this guy right here may have as good as upside as batting one on team. It's Devin Hobbs, man.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy.
Former 5-star himself.
There's a bunch of guys. I mean, we've got a lot of good football players on this football team, and you're going to hear this a lot. I think we're deep for the most part in most spots, but there's a lot of guys who I want to see buzz from this spring, and David Hobbs is one of them because he's one of these guys who could make a big jump and go into from being a really good player to an elite type player. And that's just a guy who I'm looking to hear that from.
Yeah. By the way, that's a good time to mention, though, when it comes to people we're looking for in spring.
Yeah.
There's always someone that we're talking about that winds up missing spring because
Yeah.
of some type of
Oh, yeah.
off-season surgery, that either sometimes we do hear about going into it, and other times we don't find out until the day of. And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this guy's going to miss the first 3 weeks of spring.
I guarantee he'll have all year. Yeah.
Every single
Every year. Yeah.
Every
initial press conference by Heupel, he'll usually drop that bomb.
About 3 names that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
But those 3 right there, Bob, Bryson Easton, Jackson Moore, David Hobbs, that's to me, that's a high ceiling rotation potentially right there.
Yeah. I agree.
Behind there, though, there's a couple of young guys going to have to grab some snaps.
Yeah. Nate Robinson, he'd been here a couple of years. And like I said, with these other guys, you know, you need to make a move, you know. A big bodied kid there who, I think still has a lot of potential. And Jamal Wallace, 2nd-year transfer in from JUCO.
I'm interested to see something of what he does.
He is somebody I'll be watching spring practice a lot because he's a guy who played some defensive end. He was just a big dude and gained some weight. And he when you watch these JUCO film, that dude, he brought some nastiness to himself. I mean, he hurts people.
Yeah, athletically, he's another one of these guys you talk about. A man that large should not be able to move that fast.
Right.
Super raw, though. I think he's another kid that come in high school was a linebacker type of guy, way undersized, actually. Went to JUCO and put on a massive amount of weight, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Totally raw to position, though.
Yeah.
The idea of having his hand on the ground was something totally foreign to him, even at the JUCO level. But he popped off the screen. A lot of people wanted him. We got him. This is the year we need to see, is there something there?
Right.
And there may be a lot there.
It may be.
Then you've got a few more freshmen, Bob, that I don't know if they'll make an impact this year. You never know. They could get in that 2 deep rotation. That's entirely possible. But there's definitely a couple that I like.
Yeah, I think really strong defensive tackles. I mean, you got Ethan Utley, in-state kid. We went after early.
Well, he had connections to Garner, his mother, and Garner, longtime friends from decades ago.
Then you got Charles House, who we battled Bama and Georgia for. Anybody that you're battling Bama and Georgia for, that's
a good feather in his cap, so to speak.
Yeah.
When you're top 3 and you're a defensive tackle and your 3 final schools are Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, you probably can play the game of football.
Yeah. I mean, so big time guy there, future star probably at this university. And then we mentioned Isaiah Campbell, which is, I think, will grow into a defensive tackle. Now, is that this year? Is that next year? But 5-star guy. So we loaded up on really good quality defensive tackles.
This defensive line last year was the deepest in the country. This year, they still may be the deepest in the country. Not saying it's going to be as good as last year's line because we've got several NFL players, I believe, that just departed and was going to be collecting a check from the pros this year.
Yeah.
But, Bob, this reminds me, and I'll probably mention it again in one of the other videos. I've seen some early people talking about Tennessee's potential next year, and they're saying that, well, Tennessee's going to have to get better on offense because they lost about all their defense. And if you're just looking at some starters here and there and not will follow this team, you may feel that way.
Yeah.
This defense is going to be very, very good again.
Yes.
Very, very good.
Yeah. Will they meet up to last year's expectations? We'll see. I mean, there'll be, we've went over the linebackers, DBs, and defensive line. I think the question is, what will it take for this group to be there? I think you need to find another safety that emerges there. You hope McCoy comes back and plays just as good as he did last year or better. And I think you need that linebacker to step up. I'm thinking Spillman is the guy that makes it, is the playmaker we need back there. And this defensive line, we just got to mention, there's a lot of guys who could potentially. I love the fact that we got a lot of guys who we feel like hasn't quite reached that talent that they have.
Mm-hmm.
You have enough of those type guys, somebody will. And when you have such good competition there at that position, it brings out the best in them. So somebody will emerge, I think, and become a stud that maybe hasn't been a stud to this point.
Yeah, and some of them have come close.
Yes. Yeah.
But Charlie Garner and company have evaluated this room well. They've recruited this room well.
Yeah.
And they've developed this room well.
Yeah.
So I'm not in the least concerned. I think another dominant defensive line. I think we finished top 10 defensive last year. Honestly, if you take away the small schools that play AAC and stuff like that, we probably closer to a top 5 defense.
We was.
You know, I don't see a great drop off in that.
I don't know.
Top 10-ish, top 12-ish.
Yeah.
And we just got to fix the offense. And Bob, I think that's what we'll start previewing on our next video.
Sure will be.
And so, guys, thanks for joining us today. Hit us a like if you enjoyed the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Bob, how much does it cost them to subscribe?
$0.
Yes, I can afford that.
Right.
So, guys, thanks for joining us. We do appreciate you. Go Big Orange.
Go Vols.